Before I share the next news, I just want to say it has finally sunk in. In Europe, Russian diplomats have finally been declared outlaws. Now their movement within the European Union is extremely restricted. The European Union has finally acknowledged that Russian diplomats are basically intelligence agents who, to put it bluntly, help guide drones to targets all across Europe. The governments of the European Union countries have agreed to restrict the travel of Russian diplomats within the bloc in response to a surge in sabotage attempts. According to intelligence services, these acts are often carried out by spies operating under diplomatic cover. This is exactly how the official definition of the European Union sounds. During the recent incidents, let me remind you, the airports of Vilnius and Munich, Copenhagen in Denmark were closed, and Poland also suspected an intrusion from Russia. Across Europe, Russia is staging more provocations. That's why the European Union has finally decided to restrict the movement of Russian diplomats, and as they say, they've basically assigned law enforcement officers to watch over them. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave any comment under this episode. And if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do this by making any donation using the links and details in the description of this video, or by using the QR code on your screens. The Financial Times reports today, citing European intelligence, that this should not be followed. Agents sponsored by Moscow are accused of escalating provocations against NATO countries, ranging from arson and cyber attacks to infrastructure sabotage and drone incursions. This is what European Union security services call a coordinated campaign to destabilize Kyiv's European allies. In other words, European intelligence agencies have finally voiced what we've been talking about on this YouTube channel since the very beginning. Russia is hybrid. It attacks exactly those countries that help Ukraine the most. And now, intelligence agencies in European countries understand that all provocations inside Europe are coordinated by so-called Russian diplomats, who all work for Russian intelligence. The proposed new rule will require Russian diplomats working in the capitals of the European Union to inform other governments about their travel plans before crossing the border of the host country. That is, before traveling within the European Union, they must notify the authorities that they want to go somewhere. This initiative, promoted by Czechia, is part of a new package of sanctions being developed by Brussels in response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And here's an interesting point. The thing is, adopting such a package of measures against Russians requires unanimous support from all European Union countries. And here you might say, oh well, that makes sense. Nothing will be adopted because right now Viktor Orban will block such a decision. But unexpectedly, Hungary, the last country that was against this measure, lifted its veto. Hungary is no longer opposed. However, the legal adoption may be delayed due to a dispute over Austria's request to include another measure that would lift sanctions from assets linked to the Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, in order to compensate Raiffeisen Bank for the damages it had to pay in Russia. So, Austria is saying, lift the sanctions for a while, we'll sort things out there, take the money, and then you can reimpose them. Officials said ambassadors from at least a dozen other capitals contacted last week could not support the package if Austria's proposal was included. Further negotiations will take place this Wednesday, October 8. European Union intelligence agencies claim that Russian spies posing as diplomats often manage assets or conduct operations outside their host countries in order to better evade counterintelligence surveillance. In simple terms, Russian diplomats may be assigned to one place, to one capital, but actually work somewhere else entirely. Intelligence agencies of the host countries, they know what he does, but if he crosses the border, it becomes harder for that country to keep track of him. They need to start a procedure so that the next country can keep track of him, but for that they need some kind of claim, and there isn't one. So if a diplomat officially works in Poland, let's say for example he's in Warsaw, this Russian diplomat, then this Russian diplomat is up to shady business. In Germany, for example, but definitely not in the country where he is officially assigned, and the Czech government has been lobbying for the introduction of restrictions since May of last year. Let me remind you, Prague banned entry to a number of Russian diplomats suspected of assisting Russian intelligence activities. But here the problem of Sotnia arises. They fly to Austria, get accredited there, and then cross the Austrian border. Jan Lipavsky, Czech Republic's foreign minister, said the restrictions are needed to restore reciprocity. And here is his quote: "There is no Schengen for Russia. Therefore, it makes no sense for a Russian diplomat accredited in Spain to be able to come to Prague whenever he wants. We must apply a strict principle of reciprocity when issuing short-term diplomatic visas in accordance with the Vienna Convention." That is essentially the Czech Republic is saying, listen, if, say, Spain accepts a Russian diplomat in Madrid, then that's your responsibility. You accepted him, so let him stay in Madrid. He shouldn't be allowed to go anywhere else, and you bear the responsibility. You've accepted him, so let him stay in Madrid. Don't let him go anywhere else. And actually, the Czech Republic probably knows better than anyone else in the European Union what a Russian is like. Let me remind you that back in 2014, the Czech Republic suffered from one of the largest Russian sabotage operations on European Union territory. At that time, there were explosions at the ammunition depot in Vrbětice. Prague attributed this attack to agents of the Russian main intelligence directorate. Let me remind you, a situation is unfolding over Europe in recent weeks. A subtle wave of destabilization, drones appear over airports, so-called weather balloons suddenly violate airspace, and mysterious vessels are detained in the Baltic Sea. For example, a tanker known as Pushpa and Barakai was previously spotted in areas where drone flights over Danish military bases were recorded. It is suspected of having served as a floating platform for launching drones. And this is just one link in a much broader chain of the country. And since at least 20 Russian drones violated Polish airspace on the night of September 9, alarms in the region have become almost daily. They have affected dozens of airports and military facilities in at least 7 NATO countries. I emphasize, these are just the publicly known cases. And we need to realize that Russian diplomats are still present in various places all over Europe. Who can continue to coordinate such provocations and bribe locals for other provocations? Basically, to do this on the ground. And now the Czech Republic says, listen, if someone can't manage to kick these unwashed Russians out of their country, then please, take them in and don't let them go anywhere else. Let them stay in the country that accepts them. There's no need for them to move around the European Union. And that's right, Lipavsky says there's no Schengen for Russia. Why on earth should there be? What do you mean? A Russian who is accredited in Brussels has the right to go to Warsaw, Vilnius, and so on. So I'll leave it at that. I hope the decision will be made final. Share your opinion and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.